by a lady in March 2022. This is what the lady is saying by a female applicant for a Pakistani visa. She reveals how back in March 2022, she was sexually harassed by two Pakistani officials named Tahir Abbas and Asif for a visa. They asked her lewd questions and sought physical intercourse. And there were sexual innuendos that were made, overtures that were made for visa and sponsorship. When the woman refused, they harassed her via WhatsApp. Some of the conversations remain, other conversations have been deleted. They asked her to come to Pakistan where they would pay for her stay. They even called her and said she would get a visa in 24 hours if she spent a night with them. She says she gathered the chats and evidence and raised a complaint to the Pakistan embassy, but no action was taken. She says she can't file a police complaint as she knows that they have diplomatic immunity. This lady has spoken exclusively with CNN News 18. She's spoken with Amit Shukla. Listen to what she had to say very carefully.
सर मैं पिछले साल मार्च में पाकिस्तान हाई कमीशन गई थी न्यू दिल्ली टू टेक वीज़ा टू विजिट पाकिस्तान। मेरे दो पर्पस थे। मैं गुरुद्वारा साहिब जाना चाहती थी, वहाँ के मॉन्यूमेंट्स देखना चाहती थी, एंड सेकेंडली एक लेक्चर था जो मैं वहाँ पे डिलीवर करना चाहती थी। तो आप मई में दोबारा आइए आफ्टर ईद, तो उसके बाद हम आपको वीज़ा दे देंगे। तो मैं उठ के बाहर आ गई, तो आई वॉज नियर द गेट। एक आदमी आया जो पहले सुबह भी मिले थे, वो मुझे कहते आपको वीज़ा मिल गया? तो मैंने बोला नहीं सर, वीज़ा मिला नहीं है। तो उन्होंने रिफ्यूज़ किया। कहते आप मेरे पास आते तो मैंने दे देना था आपको। कहते हाँ मैं दे सकता हूँ, आप वहीं पे जाके वेट करो जहाँ पे पहले वेट कर रहे थे। आधे घंटे बाद वो एक और रूम में ले गए, उधर बैठाया और उधर जनरल क्वेश्चंस पूछना शुरू हो गए। क्यों जाना चाहते हो, किसको मिलना है वहाँ पे, क्या करना है आपने, कितने दिनों का टूर है, एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा। सो सिंस मैं गवर्नमेंट जॉब में हूँ तो मैं एनओसी लेकर गई थी अपनी। इट वॉज अराउंड 1:15-1:20। कहते 2 बजे आ जाएंगे ऑफिसर, तो आपको थोड़ा वेट करना पड़ेगा, कोई ऑनलाइन मीटिंग चल रही है पाकिस्तान में। तो मैं वेट करती थी, वो बातें करते करते ही स्टार्टेड टॉकिंग अबाउट आर यू मैरिड। आई सेड नो सर। तो आप फिर कैसे रहते हैं, आप जिंदगी कैसे काटते हैं, हाउ इज इट पॉसिबल फॉर यू कि आप अपनी सेक्सुअल डिजायर्स के लिए क्या करते हैं। मुझे थोड़ा सा अनकंफर्टेबल लगना शुरू हो गया, लेकिन मुझे लगा कि जैसे परवर्ट होते हैं कोई, तो ही इज लाइक दैट काइंड ऑफ अ पर्सन, और वो मुझे जनरल ऐसे क्वेश्चंस पूछ रहे हैं। करते करते उन्होंने मेरा हाथ पकड़ा, तो थोड़ा जैसे ज्यादा लंबा पकड़ते हैं ना वैसे पकड़ा। मैं खड़ी हो गई। मैंने कहा सर आप या तो उनको बुला दीजिए या मुझे जाने दीजिए। तो कहते नहीं आप वेट करो, वो अभी आ रहे हैं। तो फिर बैठा लिया। फिर मुझे बताना शुरू हो गया कि मुस्लिम्स में तो हमारे पास एक कोई सेक्ट होता है, मुझे नाम भूल गया उसका। ही टोल्ड मी अबाउट सम काइंड ऑफ अ सेक्ट जो कि वॉर से वापस आते हैं, तो दे मैरी फॉर ओनली अ कपल ऑफ आवर्स। 2 घंटे के लिए वो इसी काम के लिए होता है कि वन कैन फुलफिल डिजायर्स। आपके क्या रिलीजन में अलाउड है एक्स्ट्रा मैरिटल अफेयर? क्या आपके रिलीजन में अलाउड है एक से ज्यादा शादी? तो करते करते ही अगेन हेल्ड माई हैंड। दैट इज व्हेन आई गॉट अप। मैंने कहा सर आई वांट टू लीव। और एकदम से वो भी उठ के कमरे से बाहर चले गए। इससे पहले उन्होंने खालिस्तान के ऊपर भी बातें की है। कहते आप लोगों को तो खालिस्तान चाहिए। मैंने कहा नहीं मुझे तो नहीं चाहिए, हम तो इंडियन है, वी आर वेरी हैप्पी एज एन इंडियन। कहते लेकिन आप ऑप्रेस तो हो ना। मैंने कहा नहीं सर हम ऑप्रेस नहीं है, हम तो जो मर्जी करें अपनी मर्जी से, मुझे तो कभी ऐसा कुछ लगा ही नहीं। कहते आपको खालिस्तान नहीं चाहिए? मैंने कहा नहीं बिल्कुल भी नहीं चाहिए, हमने तो कभी बोला ही नहीं। कहते आप देखना खालिस्तान आपका कश्मीर इशू के रिजॉल्व होने से पहले बन जाएगा। फिर वो जब उसने दूसरी बार हाथ पकड़ा और मैं खड़ी हो गई तो वो भी निकल गया कमरे से बाहर। फिर एक और आदमी आया जो ज्यादा जैसे सोफिस्टिकेटेड पॉलिश्ड होता है। ही वाज वेयरिंग अ बिजनेस सूट। तो वो आके बैठ गए। उन्होंने भी ऐसे क्वेश्चंस पूछे। उनका नाम है ताहिर अब्बास। ये जो पहले थे उनका नाम है आसिफ। तो मैं चुप रही, मैं कुछ नहीं बोली। मैं तो वीजा की वेट करी थी। एंड में मुझे कहते मैं वीजा आपको दे सकता हूँ, लेकिन आपको स्पॉन्सरशिप मेरे से लेनी पड़ेगी। जो आप लेकर आए हो स्पॉन्सरशिप उससे नहीं आपको मिलेगा। मैंने कहा क्यों? वो तो एक यूनिवर्सिटी का बंदा है जिसने मुझे स्पॉन्सर किया। ही इज वेरी वेल रिस्पेक्टेड, मेरे एजुकेशन के फील्ड के है। तो कहते नहीं मैं आपको स्पॉन्सरशिप दूंगा तो आपको मिलेगा। तो मैंने कहा सर मैं आपकी स्पॉन्सरशिप नहीं लेना चाहती। कहते आप क्या फर्क पड़ेगा, बैकएंड पे फाइल में क्या लिखा है किसी को क्या पता, आप मेरी स्पॉन्सरशिप ले लो। मैंने कहा नहीं सर मैं अपना नाम किसी भी पाकिस्तानी डिप्लोमेट के साथ एसोसिएट नहीं कर सकती, आप मुझे जो स्पॉन्सरशिप आई है उससे लेके दो मुझे। कहते नहीं उससे नहीं। मैं कहा नहीं सर। कहते फिर नहीं आपको मिल सकता। मैंने कहा ठीक है। मैं खड़ी हो गई और मैं बाहर आ गई एम्बेसी से। इस बात को मैं भूल भी गई क्योंकि मेरे पास कोई प्रूफ नहीं था। अंदर तो फोन भी, स्मार्ट वॉच भी नहीं लेके जाने देते। तो आई केप्ट साइलेंट। 1 महीने बाद मुझे व्हाट्सएप पे मैसेजेस आए, तो उस पे वो मैंने स्क्रीनशॉट्स आपको भेजे हैं। तो उसके ऊपर उन्होंने लिखना शुरू किया कि आप आए नहीं दोबारा, हम आपको हैंडसमली पे करेंगे रिम्यूनरेशन दैट यू राइट अगेंस्ट प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी, वो मैसेज करें साथ में डिलीट कर दें। फिर मुझे समझ आई कि ये कुछ गड़बड़ है, तो मैंने उनके स्क्रीनशॉट लेने शुरू किए। देन आई स्पॉटेड द एंटायर चैट। उसके बाद वो चैट में अगर आप लैंग्वेज देखोगे तो पहले बहुत जैसे देसी लैंग्वेज होती है, उसके बाद एकदम से सोफिस्टिकेटेड हो गई इंग्लिश की। तो मैंने इनका ही जो ग्रीवियंस पोर्टल है उसके ऊपर कंप्लेंट की। उससे पहले मुझे फोन भी आया जो ताहिर अब्बास का था, उसका फोन आया एंड ही डायरेक्टली सेड कि आप मेरे शहर में आए हैं, आओ मैं आपको डिनर पे होस्ट करूंगा, आई विल ऑफर डिनर। आई रिफ्यूज्ड डायरेक्टली, सर आई डोंट वांट टू हैव डिनर, आप मुझे वीजा का बता दीजिए, अगर है पॉसिबिलिटी तो मैं अपॉइंटमेंट ले लेती हूँ। तो देन ही सेड एज आई सेड अर्लियर यू कैन कम एंड मैं आपको स्पॉन्सर करूंगा। तो मुझे वीजा ऑफिसर को कहना पड़ेगा कि मैं इनको जानता हूँ, तो जानने के लिए व्हाई डोंट यू कम ओवर, यू स्टे ओवरनाइट एंड देन नेक्स्ट डे वी शैल ग्रांट वीजा। तब मुझे समझ लगी कि ये डायरेक्ट ऑफर है कि आप आइए मेरे साथ रात बिताइए और अगले दिन मैं आपको वीजा दूंगा। मैंने फोन बंद कर दिया। मैंने ये सारी की सारी प्रूफ निकाल के तो इनके ही ग्रीवेंस पोर्टल पे मैंने कंप्लेंट की। आई थॉट दिस कंप्लेंट वुड गो टू हाई कमिश्नर पाकिस्तान, तो वो इसके ऊपर एक्शन लेंगे, वो चुप रहे। उसके बाद मैंने फॉरेन सेक्रेटरी पाकिस्तान को भेजी, बिलावल भुट्टो को किया टैग ट्विटर हैंडल पे, मैंने डॉक्टर जयशंकर को किया, फॉरेन सेक्रेटरी इंडिया को किया। फिर किसी ने कोई जवाब नहीं दिया, मैंने एनआईए को भी किया। एनआईए ने मेरे से सारा रिकॉर्ड ले लिया। वो मुझे कहते हैं आप रिकॉर्ड भेज दो बट वी वोंट बी एबल टू डू एनीथिंग, क्योंकि ये हमारा चार्टर नहीं है। पुलिस कंप्लेन नहीं की, इनके पास इम्यूनिटी होती है उसका, तो मुझे कोई फायदा नहीं था कंप्लेन करने का।
Let's quickly take you through what all this person has claimed. She says that this is how she was treated inside the Pakistan embassy. Let's have a look at what all she said. She first says, I applied for a visa to visit Pakistan in March 2022. Then she says the Pak official, she names the official, Tahir Abbas and Asif, two people named Asif, asked me about my sex life. Then official asked me if my faith allows extramarital affairs. He also turned around and said, could you do this quick marriage thing? Get married only for this purpose and then after that break up. He also says Pak official said he could marry me. The official grabbed my hand repeatedly during the interview, made her feel highly uncomfortable. Another official named Tahir Abbas asked me lewd questions. Then both Pak officials said only they could sponsor my visa. Further, I left the embassy. A month later, both officials messaged me again. I was promised payment for writing anti-Modi articles. Then they were continuously deleting their messages that they had sent to me. I was promised, and then they also said they promised me dinner and stay if I visited Pakistan. My complaints, they promised me a visa if I spent a night with them. My complaints on the Pak embassy grievance portal have been ignored. I can't complain to the police as they have diplomatic immunity. So this is what, Abhishek, absolutely shocking that in March this happens. This lady has come forth and she's spoken about it now. But the treatment by these two officials who realize that she is a lady who's coming from Punjab, they make the Khalistani overture also. But more importantly, they treat her as a sex object, saying that you're a single woman, so get married to me.
And of course, and as per her statement that she has shared with us, there are screenshots where she was asked by the embassy officials to stay back while her team can go back.
So we have a copy of those chats. This is as alleged by her.
The person says that, so is it necessary to go back along with the faculty? You can stay. How would you come for visa then? And she politely tries to refuse and turn down those offers. Then she was also asked to have a dinner here, and then she can go back in the morning. Multiple occasions. In fact, there are conversations where the person who was trying to ask her for other favors and writing articles, he was writing messages and then deleting it back to back. So apparently he knew that these screenshots could be used against him in future. So probably he was trying to be very cautious. But this brave lady tried to come out in public and try to put all the allegation back to the officials who tried to harass her sexually and mentally as well.
See, first question that comes to mind is why didn't you file a police complaint? And is she right in saying that there is no point filing a police complaint because these people have diplomatic immunity?
Of course, in fact, our reporter Amit Shukla also asked the same question, did you file any FIR? She has approached all the section, in fact, External Affairs Ministry, Prime Minister's Office, NSA also. But filing an FIR would have asked for a police jurisdiction against those diplomats. And by 1961 Vienna Convention, any diplomat serving in a host country has immunity against legal jurisdictions of that country, of the host country. So filing an FIR wouldn't have led to any conclusion. So probably she was trying to escalate the issue at a diplomatic level so that Indian government could take some action and probably declare these two people persona non grata, and they could be probably exported back to Pakistan. So this was likely her intention. However, she has got her complaint heard at Prime Minister's office, and they have only said that her complaint has been noted. So this is her grievance.
So the PMO has said her complaint has been noted, but the fact of the matter is, should such rogues be allowed on Indian soil, whether or not they are Pakistan embassy officials or not, should they not be deemed as persona non grata? Let's ask this question and the technicalities behind this. We got Ambassador Anil Trigunyat with us. Ambassador Anil Trigunyat, how dare these louts behave like this with an Indian citizen, and they think they can get away with it?
Absolutely. Anand, this is absolutely unacceptable behavior on the part of these diplomats, so-called diplomats. I don't know who they are in the Pakistan embassy. They might be from their ISI or something. One does not know that, because from their kind of treatment, apart from the lewd statements that they have been making against this dignity of the woman, I think that the most important part was they were trying to provoke situations there and try to create some kind of taking it in a very different direction altogether, apart from the sexual kind of discussions that they had with her. But what is most important here is that these kind of people have to be called out. And the fact that she posted on their portal clearly says that the Pakistan government will not take any action, obviously, because they would not believe her story. At the same time, that the Indian government, if she has sent these statements, I'm not aware about to whom and whether it was received or seen by the people. But the fact remains is that the ministry can always call up the child affairs of the embassy and punish that complaint against these people that this has been made by an Indian citizen. And then they have to take an action. What action they can take? They might not take any action because, as you mentioned, by the diplomatic immunity. But the criminal offences, in many cases, the diplomatic immunity will have to be lifted by the country from where you are the diplomat of. So therefore, it is important that the government can ask that in such a case, if there is a very severe kind of a criminal charge, then the immunity is also lifted over the diplomats, or they are called back to their own country. Thirdly, the country can declare them, ask them to go back, but then this leads to a repercussion that the other country will also send equal number of diplomats back. So this is a kind of situation that happened, but I wish she had complained immediately and also gone to the police. It would have become a record of sort. And also with the Ministry of External Affairs, they could have met somebody and the matter could have been raised at a higher level. Now the embassy could say that, well, we did not grant her the visa, so she is making up all these stories.
Should they not be sent them back? Should they not be sent back immediately, Ambassador Anil Trigunyat? Can India not put pressure that such elements should be deported?
Yes, definitely India can ask that, and I do. And she says that she has already complained to the Ministry of External Affairs. I'm quite sure that the ministry will be seized with the matter if it has been reported to the right people. And actually, in this case, it is the CPU division and the protocol division that will handle it.
Pathikrit Pine is also with us, but Abhishek, what's the next course? What is going to happen?
So now it looks like this lady was trying to reach out to us also. He was trying to tell the story of her, sexual harassment and military harassment in the Pakistan embassy. And now she wants that this issue should be escalated at some diplomatic level where some sort of redressal could happen, because we know that being a diplomat, these two persons cannot be have any legal recourse in India, and the best that Indian government can do is deport them and declare them persona non grata. So this is something that she has always wanted, that at least these two persons should face what they tried to do, and she should have some sort of closure of the harassment that she has.
See, one aspect is that the claims she is able to corroborate with proof. She is able to corroborate with the conversations that have been had with her. She has WhatsApp chats, Pathikrit. She has also very clearly the date when she entered the embassy, what she had gone for, what happened. But the aspect is that the Pakistan embassy would turn around and say that that is Pakistani soil. Technically, that's what it is, and refuse to share CCTV footage of what happened inside the premises. But what happened outside, the chats that she has with her, isn't that evidence enough? Should an Indian woman be subject to this kind of treatment by anybody? By anybody? And if it is the Pakistan embassy, should they not have been declared persona non grata and said that there will be no embassy, there will be no mission if such louds are being entertained at the Pak embassy?
Anand, ideally it should have been like that, but the whole Pakistan is allowed. So I don't think the embassy people will be different from them. Secondly, I think my first comment would be all the Khalistani supporters, sympathizers and organizations should hear to this. And apparently what I can understand, correct me if I'm wrong, most possibly this was a Sikh woman. And so this is the way Pakistanis deal with the Sikh woman, and all those who think that Khalistan would be created and Pakistan would support them. This is the outcome. Secondly, in a country where under the blasphemy law, non-Muslims are persecuted, killed, maimed, converted, I'm not surprised what these Pakistani elements have done. Yes, strong action should have been taken and ideally should be taken by government of India. But there is another aspect to it. Anand, the reality is there is also an entrapment architecture which we can find out how gradually by putting pressure, they are asking that person to write against the government, to write against Prime Minister Modi, and then you eventually trap that person. This person might be from a reasonably well-to-do background. There can be others who require money, and then they would trap them by giving them money and other overtures, and eventually ask that person to do something in favor of Pakistan, in lieu of which all that person looks for would be taken care of. So this is the modus operandi which we should be very, very careful about. And this, I think, is not the first time. This is my comment. So this has been going on for a long time. And I think, I don't know what the government of India has done. Maybe they have done something which we are not aware of. But I think we have to take certain action. If this is something which Pakistan is doing within the embassy, imagine what the Pakistani elements and their agents are trying to do outside the embassy and within the country.
The point is they cannot take diplomatic immunity as an excuse. Say it's not the first time that Pakistan has been found conspiring and entertaining separatist elements and entertaining terrorists, entertaining people who are working against the very fabric of India and also to try and undermine its sovereignty. There have been ambassadors of Pakistan in India who have been caught red-handed in the past also entertaining such officials. India has tended to look the other way then, but this disposition claims that it is not, it's different from the other dispositions. Abhishek, you had an update,
This lady, while having conversation, she also said that these two officials tried to hire her as a sympathizer for Khalistan cause so-called, and they asked her if she could write some articles which will have pro-Taliban sentiments. She flatly refused that because she said that she has a family which is well reputed and they have a well-connected family in USA also, and her father, he has been a guest in Nawaz Sharif's tenure, government officials. And this is why she tried to avoid such overtures of being pro-Khalistani. But probably since she was from Punjab, so Pakistani officials thought that she could be an easy target.
No, not just that. They made these kind of suggestions that you must be in so much of trouble, you must be so upset, you must be needing Khalistan. And she turned around and said, I'm a Sikh, I'm from India, I'm very, very happy. That she said to Amit Shukla in the conversation that we heard on the phone.
Of course, and they have apparently also said that by the time this Kashmir issue will be sorted, Khalistan issue will be sorted sooner than the Kashmir issue. So probably those
comments, Ambassador Anil Trigunyat, add another layer. What then does is that you are not only misbehaving with an Indian citizen, you have made sexually lewd comments and tried to undermine her, and also trying to look at a quid pro quo. They have made suggestions like get married for me for 2 hours just for this purpose. You have misbehaved with her. Plus, you have tried to act against India's sovereignty. You have tried to and sow seeds of secession and try to encourage an Indian citizen to write against India. That's acting against India's sovereignty.
Well, absolutely, Anand. I mean, I think that if one were to believe the total story as it has come out, it is very clear that they tried all stunts with her. they try to, recruit her in a way. I mean, this is what I can see now, that somehow they do these kind of, we call them honey traps for the women, but this is a kind of situation that they try to put. And I think the woman was very brave, and she rightly got out of fear and eventually called the shots.
But what do you think should be the next rational step? What can India do? The PMO said we have taken cognizance. There is no response from the MEA. Who then has to step in? And how can this lady get justice?
Well, I think that they
Yes, Ambassador Trigunit. I think we've just lost Ambassador Anil Trigunit there. Pathikrit Pain, how can this lady get justice? How can an Indian citizen who's been wronged by Pakistanis get justice? How can Bharat get justice against people, elements who are on Indian soil, who are operating here, but working to undermine Bharat?
Anand, first of all, we should not, write off this incident by presuming that these are perverts. This is exactly the way the Pakistani diplomats and the ISI agents work in India. They start conversation with some of these overtures, some sexual overtures, and then they go to the serious matter. Unfortunately, Anand, the judiciary and the police cannot do anything because of the diplomatic immunity thing. But I think the government of India, because the issue is right now in media, might take certain action, as you have mentioned, about deporting them or terming them as persona non grata. But there's no guarantee, Anand, that the next person who would come in replacement will not be a bigger lout. He might be a bigger pervert. Because this is exactly what ISI teaches. This is exactly how Pakistanis look at non-Muslims. This is exactly, they look at them as sexual objects. So this is a mentality that we are dealing with. And that is why I believe that this country has to implode from inside. Unless Pakistan implodes and becomes another 4 Bangladesh, this attitude, this mentality will not go. They still live with that presumption that if you are a Pakistani, you are superior, and all non-Muslims are sexual object from them, and they can feed them anything. Look at the narrative that they're trying to print, because they have been taught that every Sikh is a Khalistani supporter. That is not so, and we all know that the kind of patriotism the Sikhs have. But look at the way the conversation starts. Perhaps if tomorrow me or you meet a Pakistani, we will not start a conversation like that, because our education system has not taught that at all, because our education is progressive. The regressive mindset that is projected by this person is not of perversion, but the education system and the mentality that Pakistan preaches and indoctrinates from childhood onwards. So I support what you said. Some action should be taken, but there's no guarantee that the replacement will not be a bigger.
No, that is okay, but we don't want such elements. We need to make a strong statement. We need to take this to the world. We need to take this to the world and show what Pakistan is. That Pakistan does not deserve a diplomatic mission in any country. This is what Pakistan does in any or every. That's the way you need to shame Pakistanis and their diplomacy. This is how we need to take this story forward. It's not about taking the matter lying down. It's not just about an Indian citizen. It's about the values that a diplomatic mission should hold. And if this is how they behave, they don't deserve diplomatic entertainment or missions anywhere across the world. That's how we need to take this story across to the world, saying this is what Pakistan is. They are in doldrums internally, and they just don't know how to behave when they go out of their country too. That's the story we need to take to everyone. You will have all the details on news18.com and firstpost.com. We will continue to track the story later tonight on the right stand. We're going to take a very short break. Pathikrit Pain, Ambassador Anil Triguniyat and Abhishek Jha, thank you very much. But on the way out, ladies and gentlemen, listen to this lady. The ordeal that she went through. And listen very carefully to these devious minds, these perverts who are operating in the embassy or the diplomatic mission of Pakistan in the national capital.
सर मैं पिछले साल मार्च में पाकिस्तान हाई कमीशन गई थी न्यू दिल्ली टू टेक वीज़ा टू विजिट पाकिस्तान. मेरे 2 पर्पस थे. मैं गुरुद्वारा साहिब जाना चाहती थी, वहाँ के मॉन्यूमेंट्स देखना चाहती थी, एंड सेकेंडली एक लेक्चर था जो मैं वहाँ पे डिलीवर करना चाहती थी. तो आप मई में दोबारा आइए आफ्टर ईद, तो उसके बाद हम आपको वीज़ा दे देंगे. तो मैं उठ के बाहर आ गई, तो आई वॉज नियर द गेट। एक आदमी आया जो पहले सुबह भी मिले थे, वो मुझे कहते हैं आपको वीजा मिल गया? तो मैंने बोला नहीं सर, वीजा मिला नहीं है। तो उन्होंने रिफ्यूज किया, कहते आप मेरे पास आते तो मैंने दे देना था आपको। कहते हाँ मैं दे सकता हूँ, आप वहीं पे जाके वेट करो जहाँ पे पहले वेट कर रहे थे। आधे घंटे बाद वो एक और रूम में ले गए, उधर बैठाया और उधर जनरल क्वेश्चंस पूछना शुरू हो गए, क्यों जाना चाहते हो, किसको मिलना है वहाँ पे, क्या करना है आपने, कितने दिनों का टूर है, एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा। सो सिंस मैं गवर्नमेंट जॉब में हूँ तो मैं एनओसी लेकर गई थी अपनी। वॉज अराउंड 1:15 1:20। कहते 2 बजे आ जाएंगे ऑफिसर, तो आपको थोड़ा वेट करना पड़ेगा, कोई ऑनलाइन मीटिंग चल रही है पाकिस्तान में। तो मैं वेट करती थी, वो बातें करते करते ही स्टार्टेड टॉकिंग अबाउट आर यू मैरिड? आई सेड नो सर। तो आप फिर कैसे रहते हैं, आप जिंदगी कैसे काटते हैं, हाउ इज इट पॉसिबल फॉर यू कि आप अपनी सेक्सुअल डिजायर्स के लिए क्या करते हैं? मुझे थोड़ा सा अनकंफर्टेबल लगना शुरू हो गया, लेकिन मुझे लगा कि जैसे परवर्ट होते हैं कोई, तो ही इज लाइक दैट काइंड ऑफ अ पर्सन, और वो मुझे जनरल ऐसे क्वेश्चंस पूछ रहे हैं। करते करते उन्होंने मेरा हाथ पकड़ा, तो थोड़ा जैसे ज्यादा लंबा पकड़ते हैं ना वैसे पकड़ा। मैं खड़ी हो गई, मैंने कहा सर आप या तो उनको बुला दीजिए या मुझे जाने दीजिए। तो कहते नहीं आप वेट करो, वो अभी आ रहे हैं। तो फिर बैठा लिया। फिर मुझे बताना शुरू हो गया कि मुस्लिम्स में तो हमारे पास एक कोई सेक्ट होता है, मुझे नाम भूल गया उसका, ही टोल्ड मी अबाउट सम काइंड ऑफ अ सेक्ट, जो कि वॉर से वापस आते हैं तो दे मैरी फॉर ओनली अ कपल ऑफ आवर्स, 2 घंटे के लिए। वो इसी काम के लिए होता है कि वन कैन फुलफिल डिजायर्स। आपके क्या रिलीजन में अलाउड है एक्स्ट्रा मैरिटल अफेयर्स? क्या आपके रिलीजन में अलाउड है एक से ज्यादा शादी? तो करते करते ही अगेन हेल्ड माई हैंड, दैट इज व्हेन आई गॉट अप। मैंने कहा सर आई वांट टू लीव, और एकदम से वो भी उठ के कमरे से बाहर चले गए। इससे पहले उन्होंने खालिस्तान के ऊपर भी बातें की है, कहते आप लोगों को तो खालिस्तान चाहिए। मैंने कहा नहीं मुझे तो नहीं चाहिए, हम तो इंडियन है, वी आर वेरी हैप्पी एज एन इंडियन। कहते लेकिन आप ऑप्रेस तो हो ना। मैंने कहा नहीं सर हम ऑप्रेस नहीं है, हम तो जो मर्जी करें अपनी मर्जी से, मुझे तो कभी ऐसा कुछ लगा ही नहीं। कहते आपको खालिस्तान नहीं चाहिए? मैंने कहा नहीं बिल्कुल भी नहीं चाहिए, हमने तो कभी बोला ही नहीं। कहते आप देखना खालिस्तान आपका कश्मीर इशू के रिजॉल्व होने से पहले बन जाएगा। फिर वो जब उसने दूसरी बार हाथ पकड़ा और मैं खड़ी हो गई तो वो भी निकल गया कमरे से बाहर। फिर एक और आदमी आया जो ज्यादा जैसे सोफिस्टिकेटेड पॉलिश्ड होता है, ही वाज वेयरिंग अ बिजनेस सूट, तो वो आके बैठ गए। उन्होंने भी ऐसे क्वेश्चंस पूछे। उनका नाम है ताहिर अब्बास, ये जो पहले थे उनका नाम है आसिफ। तो मैं चुप रही, मैं कुछ नहीं बोली, मैं तो वीजा की वेट करी थी। एंड में मुझे कहते मैं वीजा आपको दे सकता हूँ, लेकिन आपको स्पॉन्सरशिप मेरे से लेनी पड़ेगी, जो आप लेकर आए हो स्पॉन्सरशिप उससे नहीं आपको मिलेगा। मैंने कहा क्यों? वो तो एक यूनिवर्सिटी का बंदा है जिसने मुझे स्पॉन्सर किया, ही इज वेरी वेल रिस्पेक्टेड, मेरे एजुकेशन के फील्ड के है। तो कहते नहीं मैं आपको स्पॉन्सरशिप दूंगा तो आपको मिलेगा। तो मैंने कहा सर मैं आपकी स्पॉन्सरशिप नहीं लेना चाहती। कहते आप क्या फर्क पड़ेगा बैकएंड पे, फाइल में क्या लिखा है किसी को क्या पता, आप मेरी
will create to larger divisions in society. Let's listen closely to what Mr. Bhagwat said. He is talking about a fundamental idea of way of life in India. He's talking about, and I don't want to go into details of what Hindutva means and all of that. I don't think there should be a problem with it. See, Zaka from 1980s onwards, ever since Martin Kramer coined the term political Islam and wrote books and subsequent articles about it, it has sparked a debate world over on the nature, on the supranational nature of political Islam. Now, this is for if people believe in Islamic academics taking center stage in Indian politics today, then I think they need to make themselves clear what is the version of Islam that they want to follow. Do they believe in nationalism? Do they have supranational ambitions? These are questions that will be confronted
again,
with.
Shubrashta,
I disagree with Mr. Sapra when he says...
Shubrashta, by saying that, you are again saying that Muslims of India need to prove their nationalism. Why? They are as much Indian citizens as you are or I am or anyone else is.
I don't want to be misconstrued, Zaka, so allow me to explain myself in 30 more seconds. No, I am not saying that Muslims need to prove their nationalism at all. I am just saying that in a vitiated atmosphere, when a large section of Muslim majority feels that they are maybe insecure in the Indian soil, or maybe the new government is trying to clamp down upon them, I think the academics in the Muslim world need to come together and identify for the larger benefit of the public what their views on nationalism is. It doesn't make them anything less national. It doesn't make them less national.
Okay.
It doesn't make them less patriotic. For sure, I mean, people like us who have grown up listening to stories of partition, we have known that if there was a Muhammad Ali Jinnah, there was a Maulana Abul Kalam Azad who absolutely detested, abhorred partition and took cudgels with Nehru against that.
Dr.
So,
Nalan Mehta,
there's no question, there's
one
no
of the
question
other
of
things,
doubting
yeah,
Muslim
okay, let me go on to our next
nationalism.
guest. Dr. Nalan Mehta, one of the other things that Mr. Bhagwat said, and I want to quote again, this war is not against an enemy outside, but against an enemy within. So there is a war to defend Hindu society, Hindu dharma, Hindu culture. Foreign invaders are no longer there, but foreign influences and foreign conspiracies have continued. So since this is a war, people are likely to get overzealous. Although this is not desirable, yet provocative statements will be uttered. Again, opposition is saying that, instead of saying this will only fan the flames that have been lit by the likes of a Pragya Thakur. Now, why doesn't the RSS chief come out and say that what Pragya Thakur said, asking or exhorting Hindus to keep their weapons ready, if he condemned that, that would have sent an unequivocal signal to people like her. Instead, by saying this is overzealousness, it may not be desirable, but provocative statements will be continued to be uttered. Isn't he fanning the flames? Isn't he sending a signal to these elements that aapko jo marzi bolna hai bolo?
No, Zaka, in fact, I think that this is a very important interview by the RSS Sarsang Chalak. In fact, I think this is a signal from the Sangh that that for those who overstep the line, for the extremist elements on the Hindutva right, to pipe down. The context of his entire statement in the interview was that do you think that there is too much aggression happening, so too many aggressive statements happening from within Hindus? And his answer was specific to that. In fact, he alluded to Shivaji Maharaj. He specifically spoke about the fact that's when he spoke about this 1,000-year war, which is the Sangh's view on this, where he specifically said that, look, there was a time when this happened, but right now we are in a position of dominance. And he was speaking about Hindus in particular and how the Sangh views that. He says that because of that, there was a time, and he specifically talked about the Ram Janmabhoomi movement as well, saying that a slogan was formed, there was a movement, but now a temple is being made, Hindus are secure. So therefore, you cannot have the same rhetoric of aggression. So therefore, and he actually said people should introspect within. In fact, in many ways, it was almost like a Deng Xiaoping statement that, we now need to look at the next step forward, and you don't need to have the same rhetoric of aggression as before. And in
but did he say anything that would send out a signal to these elements? You can call them fringe, mainstream, whatever, elected representative from Bhopal. I don't know how fringe she is, but did he say anything in that interview that sends out a signal to these people that, look, you cannot be making or seen to be making these provocative statements? Was there anything in that interview?
He did not specifically mention. The representative from Bhopal, but he made a generic statement that this kind of aggressiveness is not necessarily conducive. Now, they might have been private messages sent out, but in the overall context, in the way that this was said, the length at which he spoke about, I think this is an unequivocal signal from the Sangh to extremist elements to pipe down. Or whether this is enough or not is we'll have to wait and see.
So let me ask Tausif Ahmed Khan. Supremacist statements have been made from Muslim leaders as well. I just want to give you a compilation of quotes. Waris Pathan says in February of 2020, हम सिर्फ 15 करोड़ हैं लेकिन 100 करोड़ पर भारी रहेंगे, ये याद रखना. Akbaruddin Owaisi of the MIM says, we rule this country for 800 years. 225 करोड़ मुसलमान हैं, हमें 15 मिनट ही चाहिए विदाउट पुलिस टू शो 100 करोड़ हिंदू की हम क्या कर सकते हैं, कौन ज़्यादा पावरफुल है. There is a MIM leader from Uttar Pradesh who says, for 800 years, 832 years, worms and insects like you have been ruled by us. Now, this is exactly the supremacist attitude and statements that Mr. Bhagwat is saying you need to come out of that mentality. I mean, who is to tell Akbaruddin Owaisi, who is to tell Waris Pathan that this is exactly what is fanning the flames of hatred and division in this country?
No, these statements cannot be taken out of context. You see, these statements are for the election purposes, are jumlas and nothing more than that. Just like Modi ji came and promised 15 lakh rupaye aa jayenge, sabke account mein mujhe Pradhan Mantri bana do. It was nothing more than a jumla.
Charan Singh Sapra, let me start by asking you, what is your contention or what is your problem with what Mr. Bhagwat has said? He has said that no one should have a supremacist mindset if you're living in a land of equals, in a land where Article 15 says that everyone is equal before the law, the Constitution guarantees that. why should anyone have a supremacist mindset? What is wrong in what he said?
See, Zaka, let me speak one line in Hindi and thereafter I will carry on. It's like, kahin pe nigahein, kahin pe nishana. Actually, the Mahabharata of 2024 has started, it seems. And Mohan Bhagwat and RSS wants people to believe that they are setting the narrative for the same. Now, let me also remind you, the very leaders of RSS, they have been talking that RSS is a cultural organization or it's a social organization. Then why are they indulging into the majoritarian and authoritarian rule or authoritarian politics or authoritarian statements? Now you also see the chronology of things what are happening. The BJP leader from Karnataka, he says we will contest elections on the plank of love jihad. Pragya Thakur says she gives a call to Hindus to sharpen the knives. Amit Shah, he declares the date of Ayodhya temple 1st January. And thereafter, Mohan Bhagwat's statement, which clearly shows the majoritarian or the authoritarian rule which BJP is doing. So there is a chronology to everything.
No,
and
by saying that no one should have a
ask,
supremacist mindset, how is it authoritarian, I want to know, and how is it majoritarian? And secondly, no one is saying that just because, Amit Shah
ಸಂಗೊಳ್ಳಿ ರಾಯಣ್ಣನ ಬಿಡು ಈ ಪುಣ್ಯ ಭೂಮಿಗೆ ನನ್ನ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರಗಳು कर्नाटका का ये क्षेत्र अपनी परंपरा, संस्कृति और ज्ञान के लिए प्रसिद्ध है। यहां की अनेक विभूतियों को ज्ञानपीठ पुरस्कार से सम्मानित किया गया है। इस क्षेत्र ने देश को एक से बढ़कर एक महान संगीतकार दिए हैं। पंडित कुमार गंधर्व, पंडित बसवराज राजगुरु, पंडित मल्लिकार्जुन मानसोर, भारत रत्न पंडित भीमसेन जोशी और पंडिता गंगूबाई हंगल जी को मैं आज हुबली की धरती पर आकर नमन करते हुए अपनी श्रद्धांजलि देता हूं। साथियों, साल 2023 में राष्ट्रीय युवा दिवस का ये दिन बहुत विशेष है। एक और ये ऊर्जा महोत्सव और दूसरी ओर आजादी का अमृत महोत्सव। उठो, जागो और लक्ष्य से पहले मत रुको। एली एद्ददेली गुरु मटवा तनका निल्लदी। विवेकानंद जी का ये उद्घोष भारत के युवाओं का जीवन मंत्र है। आज अमृतकाल में हमें अपने कर्तव्यों पर जोर देते हुए अपने कर्तव्यों को समझते हुए देश को आगे बढ़ाना है। और इसमें भारत के युवाओं के सामने स्वामी विवेकानंद जी की बड़ी प्रेरणा है। मैं इस अवसर पर स्वामी विवेकानंद जी के चरणों में नमन करता हूं। अभी कुछ दिन ही पहले कर्नाटका की धरती के एक और महान संत श्री सिद्धेश्वर स्वामी जी का देहावसान हुआ है। मैं सिद्धेश्वर स्वामी जी को भी आदरपूर्वक श्रद्धांजलि अर्पित करता हूं। साथियों, स्वामी विवेकानंद जी का कर्नाटका से अद्भुत रिश्ता था। उन्होंने अपने जीवन काल में कर्नाटका और इस क्षेत्र की कई यात्राएं की थी। बंगलुरु जाते समय वो हुबली, धारवाड़ भी आए थे। इन यात्राओं ने उनके जीवन को एक नई दिशा दी थी। मैसूरू के महाराजा भी उन लोगों में से एक थे जिन्होंने स्वामी विवेकानंद जी को शिकागो यात्रा में उनकी मदद की थी। स्वामी जी का भारत भ्रमण इस बात का भी प्रमाण है कि कितनी ही सदियों से हमारी चेतना एक थी। एक राष्ट्र के रूप में हमारी आत्मा एक थी। ये एक भारत श्रेष्ठ भारत की भावना का अमर उदाहरण है। इसी भावना को अमृत काल में देश नए संकल्पों के साथ आगे बढ़ा रहा है। साथियों, स्वामी विवेकानंद जी कहते थे कि जब युवा ऊर्जा हो, जब युवा शक्ति हो, तो भविष्य का निर्माण करना, राष्ट्र का निर्माण करना उतना ही आसान होता है। कर्नाटका की इस धरती ने खुद ऐसी कितनी ही महान विभूतियां दी है जिन्होंने अपने कर्तव्यों को सर्वोपरि रखा। बेहद कम उम्र में असाधारण काम किए। चित्तूर की रानी चेन्नम्मा देश की अग्रणी महिला स्वतंत्रता सेनानियों में से एक थी। उन्होंने सबसे मुश्किल समय में भी आजादी की लड़ाई को नेतृत्व दिया। रानी चेन्नम्मा की ही सेना में उनकी साथी संगोली रायण्णा, ऐसे वीर योद्धा भी जिनके शौर्य ने ब्रिटिश सेना का हौसला तोड़ दिया था। इसी धरती के नारायण महादेव धोनी मात्र 14 साल की उम्र में देश के लिए बलिदान देने वाले शहीद बने थे। युवा की जीवटता क्या होती है, उसके हौसले कैसे मौत को भी मात दे सकते हैं, ये कर्नाटका के सपूत लांस नायक हनुमन थप्पा खोपड़ ने सियाचिन के पहाड़ों में दिखा दिया था। -55 डिग्री तापमान में भी वो 6 दिन तक मौत से मुकाबला करते रहे थे और वहां से जिंदा निकल करके आए थे। ये सामर्थ्य केवल शौर्य तक ही सीमित नहीं है। आप देखिए, श्री विश्वेश्वरैया जी ने इंजीनियरिंग में अपना लोहा मनवाकर ये साबित किया कि युवा प्रतिभा किसी एक दायरे में बंधी नहीं होती है। इसी तरह देश के अलग अलग हिस्सों में हमारे युवाओं की प्रतिभा और क्षमता एक से एक कल्पनातीत अविश्वसनीय उदाहरणों का अंबार लगा हुआ है। आज भी मैथ से लेकर के साइंस तक जब दुनिया के मंचों पर प्रतियोगिताएं होती हैं तो भारतीय युवाओं की काबिलियत विश्व को विस्मित कर देती है। साथियों, अलग अलग कालखंड में किसी भी राष्ट्र की प्राथमिकताएं बदलती है, उसके लक्ष्य बदलते हैं। आज 21वीं सदी के जिस पड़ाव पर हम भारतीय पहुंचे हैं, हमारा भारत पहुंचा है, वो उपयुक्त समय सदियों के बाद आया है। और इसकी सबसे बड़ी वजह है भारत का ये युवा सामर्थ्य, ये युवा शक्ति। आज भारत एक युवा देश है। दुनिया की बड़ी युवा आबादी हमारे देश में है, हिंदुस्तान में है। युवा शक्ति is the driving force of India's journey. The next 25 years are important for building the nation. Yuva Shakti's dreams decide India's direction. Yuva Shakti's aspirations decide India's destination. Yuva Shakti's passion decides India's path. To harness the Yuva Shakti, we need to be young with our thoughts, with our efforts. To be young is to be dynamic in our efforts. To be young is to be panoramic in our perspective. To be young is to be pragmatic. Friends, if the world looks to us for solutions, it is because of the dedication of our Amrit generation. आज जब दुनिया भारत की तरफ इतनी उम्मीदों की नजर से देख रही है, तो इसके पीछे आप सभी मेरे युवा साथी हैं। आज हम दुनिया में 5वें नंबर की अर्थव्यवस्था है और हमारा लक्ष्य है कि हम इसे टॉप 3 में लेकर के जाएं। देश की ये इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ हमारे युवाओं के लिए अपार अवसर लेकर आएगी। आज हम कृषि के क्षेत्र में दुनिया की अग्रणी ताकत है। कृषि के क्षेत्र में टेक्नोलॉजी और इनोवेशन से एक नया रिवॉल्यूशन आने वाला है। इसमें युवाओं के लिए नए अवसर पैदा होंगे, नई ऊंचाइयों पर जाने के नए रास्ते खुलेंगे। स्पोर्ट्स के क्षेत्र में भी आज भारत दुनिया की एक बड़ी पावर बनने की तरफ अग्रसर हो रहा है। ये भारत के युवाओं के सामर्थ्य के कारण ही संभव हो पा रहा है। आज गांव हो, शहर हो या कस्बा, हर जगह उफान पर है युवाओं का जज्बा। आज आप इन बदलावों के साक्षी बन रहे हैं। कल आप इसकी ताकत से फ्यूचर लीडर बनेंगे। फ्रेंड्स, this is a special time in history. You are a special generation. You have a special mission. This is the mission of making an impact for India on the global scene. For every mission, a foundation is needed. Whether it is economy or education, sports or startups, skill development or digitalization, in every domain, a strong foundation has been laid in the last 8-9 years. The runway is ready. The runway is ready for your takeoff. Today, there is a great optimism in the world towards India and its youth. This optimism is about you. This optimism is because of you. And this optimism is for you. Today, there are global voices saying this century is India's century. It is your century. The century of India's youth. There are global surveys saying majority of the big investors want to invest in India. These investors want to invest in you, India's youth. Indian startups are getting record investments. Many global companies are setting up manufacturing plants to make in India. From toys to tourism, defense to digital, India is making headlines across the world. So, this is a historic time when optimism and opportunity are coming together. साथियों, हमारे देश में हमेशा से नारी शक्ति को और नारी शक्ति ने राष्ट्र शक्ति को जागरूक रखने, राष्ट्र शक्ति को बढ़ाने का काम किया है। अब आजादी के इस अमृत काल में महिलाएं, हमारी बेटियां और नए नए पराक्रम करके दिखा रही है। भारत की महिलाएं आज फाइटर जेट्स उड़ा रही है, सेना में कॉम्बेटिव रोल्स में शामिल हो रही है। साइंस, टेक्नोलॉजी, स्पेस, स्पोर्ट्स, ऐसे हर क्षेत्र में हमारी बेटियां बुलंदियां छू रही है। ये उद्घोष है कि भारत अब पूरी शक्ति से अपने लक्ष्यांकों की ओर बढ़ रहा है। साथियों, हमें 21वीं सदी को भारत की सदी बनाना है और इसलिए ये जरूरी है कि हम वर्तमान से 10 कदम आगे की सोचें। हमारी सोच फ्यूचरिस्टिक हो, हमारी अप्रोच फ्यूचरिस्टिक हो। ये जरूरी है कि युवा आकांक्षाओं की पूर्ति के लिए आप पॉजिटिव डिस्रप्शन करें, विश्व के आधुनिक देशों से भी आगे चले। अगर हम याद करें, आज से 10-20 वर्ष पूर्व ऐसी कितनी ही चीजें अस्तित्व में भी नहीं थी जो आज हमारे जीवन का अभिन्न हिस्सा है। इसी तरह आने वाले कुछ वर्षों में संभवतः ये दशक खत्म होने से पहले पहले हमारी दुनिया एकदम बदलने वाली है। आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस, मशीन लर्निंग, इंटरनेट ऑफ थिंग्स और AR/VR जैसी इमर्जिंग टेक्नोलॉजी एक नए स्वरूप में इवॉल्व हो चुकी होंगी। डेटा साइंस और साइबर सिक्योरिटी जैसे शब्द कहीं ज्यादा गहराई से हमारे जीवन के हर आयाम से जुड़ चुके होंगे। हमारी शिक्षा से लेकर देश की सुरक्षा तक, हेल्थ केयर से लेकर कम्युनिकेशन तक, सब कुछ एडवांस टेक्नोलॉजी के जरिए एक नए अवतार में दिखने वाला है। आज जिन कामों का अस्तित्व भी नहीं है, आने वाले समय में वो युवाओं के लिए मेन स्ट्रीम प्रोफेशन होने की संभावनाएं हैं। इसलिए ये जरूरी है कि हमारे युवा फ्यूचर स्किल्स के लिए खुद को तैयार करें। दुनिया में जो कुछ नया हो रहा है, हमें उससे खुद को जोड़ना होगा। जो काम कोई नहीं कर रहा है, हमें उन्हें भी करना होगा। नई पीढ़ी को इस माइंडसेट से तैयार करने के लिए देश नई राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति के जरिए प्रैक्टिकल और फ्यूचरिस्टिक
behind the politics of polarization. They want to hide behind the shield of, divisive politics, and they just want to change the narrative of the country.
Let me ask,
they are not worried about the poor people of
let me
this
ask
country.
Shubrashta, this is what Mr. Bhagwat said. There is no harm to Muslims living in India, living today in Bharat. If they wish to stick to their faith, they can. If they want to return to the faith of their ancestors, they may. It is entirely their choice. There is no such stubbornness. Islam has nothing to fear. To which politicians like Mr. Owaisi have said that they don't need Mr. Bhagwat's permission to stay in India. Indian Muslims have decided to stay on in India because at the time of partition, their ancestors decided that they will live in a country where all religions are treated equal. They did not want to go to an Islamic republic like Pakistan. And that is not because of the benevolence of Mr. Bhagwat or the RSS.
Right. Thank you, Zaka. Zaka, I think what Mr. Owaisi says has always been about mismeasuring contexts and mismeasuring things which are no longer in public currency. For example, I don't think when Mr. Bhagwat was talking today, he spoke anything about citizenship at all. So the questions that Mr. Owaisi are raising are far-fetched, and actually these are questions which will create to larger divisions in society. Let's listen closely to what Mr. Bhagwat said. He is talking about a fundamental idea of way of life in India. He's talking about, and I don't want to go into details of what Hindutva means and all of that. I don't think there should be a problem with it. See, Zaka, from 1980s onwards, ever since Martin Kramer coined the term political Islam and wrote books and subsequent articles about it, it has sparked a debate world over on the nature, on the supranational nature of political Islam. Now, this is for if people believe in Islamic academics taking center stage in Indian politics today, then I think they need to make themselves clear what is the version of Islam that they want to follow. Do they believe in nationalism? Do they have supranational ambitions? These are questions that will be confronted
again,
with.
Shubrashta,
I disagree with Mr. Sapra when he says...
Shubrashta, by saying that, you are again saying that Muslims of India need to prove their nationalism. Why? They are as much Indian citizens as you are or I am or anyone else is.
I don't want to be misconstrued, Zaka, so allow me to explain myself in 30 more seconds. No, I am not saying that Muslims need to prove their nationalism at all. I am just saying that in a vitiated atmosphere, when a large section of Muslim majority feels that they are maybe insecure in the Indian soil, or maybe the new government is trying to clamp down upon them, I think the academics in the Muslim world need to come together and identify for the larger benefit of the public what their views on nationalism is. It doesn't make them anything less national. It doesn't make them less national.
Okay.
It doesn't make them less patriotic. For sure, I mean, people like us who have grown up listening to stories of partition, we have known that if there was a Muhammad Ali Jinnah, there was a Maulana Abul Kalam Azad who absolutely detested, abhorred partition and took cudgels with Nehru against that.
Dr. Nalan Mehta,
there's no question, there's no question of doubting
yeah,
Muslim
okay, let me go on to our next
nationalism.
guest. Dr. Nalan Mehta, one of the other things that Mr. Bhagwat said, and I want to quote again, this was... Good evening, this is Viewpoint. I'm Zaka Jacob. The judiciary versus executive debate has now waded into far more consequential territory. It is not restricted just to the appointment of judges and the collegium versus NJAC systems. Yesterday, Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar, speaking at an event in Jaipur, questioned the very idea of the basic structure of the Constitution, saying that no such thing is mentioned in the Constitution itself. It is a judicial construct dating back to 1973 and the famous Keshwananda Bharati case. He also said that if Parliament has the power to amend the Constitution, then it certainly can change the basic structure of the Constitution as well. He says the idea of a basic structure is only to emasculate the powers of an elected legislature. The opposition and some folks in judicial quarters are also crying foul. The question now is who will blink first in this judiciary versus executive battle that's been going on for a number of months.
You cannot script in legislature a judgment of the court. उसी भावना में court cannot legislate.
I think he needs to go back to his textbooks. The Constitution is bigger than all of us. That's the supreme guiding principle that we need to follow. We follow.
The power of judicial review includes the power of the Supreme Court to, decide on validity of any amendment or the provision of the Constitution.
All right, so this has now gone into a far bigger domain, bigger terrain between the executive and the judiciary. I'm now joined by Advocate Mahima Singh of the Congress Party, Aman Lekhi is former Additional Solicitor General, Sania Talwar is editor of Law Beat, and we'll also be joined by PDT Achari, who's former Lok Sabha Secretary General. Aman Lekhi, let me start with you first. What the Vice President said yesterday, that this concept of basic structure, this doctrine that's been laid down, does not find mention in the Constitution itself. He believes that this is a way to emasculate the powers of an elected legislature. Is it time to take a re-look at this, the very root of this basic structure concept?
To say that it's not rooted in the Constitution is a completely incorrect reading of the Constitution itself. The context in which it was rendered is important. He is mentioning parliamentary sovereignty. The purpose of Keshwananda Bharati is basically to acknowledge it, because in an earlier judgment, what the court had actually held was the constitutional amendments come in the definition of law, and the parliament cannot, through constitutional amendments, alter fundamental rights. What the Supreme Court said was the power of the parliament is plenary, but while the power is plenary, it's subject to certain limitations. That is, you cannot alter the identity of the Constitution. And in ascertaining the identity of the Constitution, you draw upon the constitutional elements itself, which are drawn from the Constitution. Illustratively, like we have Article 14, everyone knows, equality. So principle of republicanism is derived from 14. Similarly, restraint on power, judicial review, These are all derived from the Constitution because the purpose is that the Constitution is supreme. It is a controlled Constitution. No single entity can have hegemony. And the ultimate arbiter of what the Constitution is the Supreme Court. So this particular comment which is there is bereft of legal sense because it ignores some vital reality as to what the constitutional principles are. And the vice principal, having legal learning as he did, would have been better informed to word it correctly rather than.
But on the question of do they then have do a bunch of unelected folks then have the final say on the law of the land, as it were? Ultimately, in a participative democracy, in a people's democracy, shouldn't it be Parliament? Shouldn't it be elected legislators and parliamentarians who should have that final say as to what the law of the land is?
Well, they're not unelected folks. They are trained in law. They have spent a lifetime ascertaining, deciding, defining, understanding, applying what law is. And they are being conferred by the Constitution the right to actually declare what Constitution is. And the Blackstonian principle, which is supposed to be followed, is no longer there. It's not as if the courts are there only to find the law. Courts make the law. And as long as the law remains within the constraints of the legal system and as basically consonant with what the legal system permits, and as far as this particular concept is concerned, it is wholly within the confines. For anyone to say it's extra constitutional and to object to it on the ground of parliamentary supremacy is ignoring something very basic and fundamental.
Let me ask Advocate Mahima Singh. I mean, this whole, the nub of the problem starts from the appointment of judges, this collegium system. Again, the government, the law minister, and now, of course, the vice president also, Mahima Singh, have been arguing that, again, there is no mention of this collegium system in the Constitution. India is perhaps the only large democracy in the world where judges appoint judges. You look at the United States, it's the executive that appoints the judges. You look at Britain, over the last 10, 15 years or so, there is a Judicial Appointment Commission that appoints judges. Why should judges have sole and only sort of overlord say over who gets to be a judge in the higher courts and who doesn't? I mean, shouldn't there be a check on that by another branch of government?
Good evening, Zaka, and good evening, all. Let me just say that the constitutional appointee, the appointees of the BJP government on the constitutional positions, and also, the VP who's been elected to that position by the representatives of the public, unfortunately, are speaking as mouthpieces of the BJP and the RSS. And the BJP and the RSS have never liked the idea of a constitution of the tricolor. It's a matter of history. It's out in the public. Everybody knows that, and so they speak to denigrate the spirit of the Constitution whenever they do. What you're asking, Zaka, is something absolutely different, and what the VP has said, the chairman of the Rajya Sabha has said, is actually threatening the very spirit of the Constitution. And every Constitution-loving citizen today, as Mr. Chidambaram has rightly put, must be warned of the dangers ahead. Because tomorrow they might say they might hit at the very federal structure of the Constitution. The debate on collegium system is something absolutely different. But when he's talking about
when he says, I think I mean, you could call it flawed logic, but he says if Parliament has the powers to amend the Constitution, and we've had over 100 of them over the last 75 years of our independence, why doesn't then Parliament, which is according to him supreme in our democratic scheme of things, why does it not have the power to change even the basic structure? He says, after all, the basic structure is also something that is not defined in law. It's not defined in the Constitution.
No, the Parliament is not supreme or sovereign in our system of things. It is the Constitution, by the people, for the people, of the people. That is the spirit of the preamble of the Constitution, that we have given this Constitution to ourselves, and it is the Constitution that provides for the separation of powers also. And now in that, I mean, who will check, as the senior advocate was speaking previously, who will check upon the government, the legislator, come from all sorts of backgrounds, you have to remember. Okay. And in fact, right now, the maximum numbers of members of parliament with criminal records are from the BJP. So, there's no absolution to whatever they resolve at the legislature.
Okay. Let me ask PDT Achari. I think the concern is also arising from this larger attack that the Vice President seems to have made against this basic structure and the idea of a basic structure, and only the judiciary knows if something is violative or if a particular law is violative of the basic structure. Tomorrow, let's say, for example, an elected government which has parliamentary majority wants to change or amend the words secular from the Constitution, from the preamble of the Constitution. Would the judges then sit upon on decision on that as to whether that alters the basic structure or doesn't alter the basic structure? I mean, the argument that's being made by the BJP, the government and people close there, is that, you know, if these words, socialist and secular, could be inserted after the 1973 judgment, surely their removal can also stand the 1973 judgment.
Well, you know, the arguments which are being put forth and the statements which are being made by the higher constitutional authorities actually are not new, because these arguments and the whole discussion about this has taken place in the past. So far as the speeches made by the Vice President and the Honorable Speaker yesterday in that presiding officer's conference, you know, these speeches are very important and serious, and their concern is, of course, very serious, and that should be taken very seriously. And I think the Indian society should consider these points very seriously.
No, it's a simple question, Mr. Achari. Does Parliament have the authority to change the basic structure of the Constitution? Tomorrow, if a law, like this is just one example. When we added the word secular, we also added the word socialist. I don't think any one of us thinks that today, the India of 2022, especially after the 1991 reforms, is a socialist country, right? So tomorrow, if an elected government, which has a parliamentary majority, wants to remove that word from the preamble, would that be considered violative of the basic structure of the Constitution?
Well, the secularism is the basic structure, and so is democracy, so is republican form of government. These are all parts of basic structure, and certainly as the law stands today, the Parliament does not have that power to alter the basic structure, but Parliament has the power to amend any part of the Constitution, including the chapter on fundamental rights. But the only rider is that Parliament cannot make an amendment which will alter the basic structure of the Constitution. So that is the kind of limitation which has been imposed by the Supreme Court on the powers of Parliament.
So, Sania Talwar, do you reckon with yesterday's statements, this has gone far beyond just appointment of judges? Again, the peeve that the government has is you have struck down, again, I think it was the Constitutional Bench that struck down NJAC in 2015, saying that it violates the basic structure of the Constitution. Where in the Constitution does it say that judges have to appoint judges?
So, Zaka, I think we also need to be reflecting on the statements from the point of view of when he says that, you know, you're not supposed to frame or legislate the laws as a judiciary. That is one part of his comment which is missing from the discourse. That is one part I want to reflect on. Second, when you say that the Constitution is supreme, we may have to step back a little bit and understand that the Constitution is given by the people of India. So the people, it is the people who are sovereign. In fact, I'd like to read out something, a short comment that Justice V.K. Iyer had made. I want to read it out because I don't want to miss out on what he said. If two organs of state fail to perform their functions properly, it is for people to provide a corrective. None of the three organs are supreme. Judiciary is not above people and is accountable to ultimate sovereigns, which is the people of India. So there is no hegemony here of either of the pillars of our country. So I don't see where the issue is. If the basic structure doctrine is being debated, I'm glad it's being debated. I'm glad these conversations are coming forward. Judicial accountability is something that is now coming up. So I don't see what the problem is, what the problem seems to be.
The fear is this, like I said, if tomorrow the BJP government with a parliamentary majority wants to amend, let's say, the word secular or the word even socialist from the preamble of the Constitution, would that be considered violative of the basic structure? Would that stand the test of judicial scrutiny?
I think it would, yes. Why not? I mean, the word secular itself is something that came about much later. In fact, if you look at the way the constitution, so when we say the constitution is supreme and everything is about constitutionalism, we also must dig down and figure out how the constitution itself was drafted. Now, I'm not saying that we don't need to trust it. I'm only saying that we need to critique it as well. We need to see how it was drafted by majoritarian party in the mock assembly, so as to speak. So, yes, I mean, why not?
Mr. Lekhi, you want to respond to what Sania just said?
It got disconnected. I couldn't hear what she had said, but the first part where she was referring to the people, you see, this is where the problem is. Who was the people? And mainly because the people decide doesn't necessarily mean what the majority decides or what any section decides will be the law. That's the reason why you have judicial review, which is counter-majoritarian. And how is it counter-majoritarian? Because it goes on principles, and principles which are consecrated. Consecrated in a document, the Constitution, which is supreme. The question is whether we like it or not. What the Constitution is, there has to be an agency which has decided. That agency is the court. There's an interplay between the court and judiciary, which is part of the separation of powers and the checks and balances. As far as the basic structure doctrine is concerned, it fits perfectly in the separation of power and is part of the checks and balances. And there's no answer to this to say that because it is the representative, the people who will declare the law, as far as what the representative decides is final, because that finality is in the constitutional word, not in the view of the legislature. And what the word of the Constitution is trained bodies, the folks which you mentioned too, who have been entrusted with responsibility. And it doesn't end over there. There's a constant interface between it. The court may pass a verdict, the legislature may pass a law. And so this is the way the system operates. But to say you exclude the court altogether, and because it is the parliament is supreme, therefore basic structure is wrong, it is premised on a complete misunderstanding of our legal system.
No, but what about the example that I gave? Let's say tomorrow the government wants to change the word secular or even socialist for that matter, which many say, in India of 2022 is hardly a socialist country. Would that be within the purview of the legislature, and would that stand judicial scrutiny? Would that alter the basic structure as has been envisaged?
No, you see, this example is inappropriate because as far as the amendment is concerned, will not only be the preamble, because as far as the amendment, the preamble is going to actually set the fundamental principles how the Constitution is interpreted. There is no occasion for the court right now to tinker with what the preamble says. And for the court to decide if the impact, you have to look at the amendment, the impact is to go contrary to principles which are in fact accepted as fundamental as to how we are supposed to govern, then of course it will be struck down as being contrary to the basic structure. The occasion for this, as you correctly pointed out, is the NJAC judgment. Now, I have reservation for the NJAC judgment itself. I personally feel the judgment is not correct. But to say that because the judgment went against you and the law which you enacted has been struck down, therefore the basic structure is wrong, is fundamentally incorrect. Because what you are actually saying is that one organ of the government has got superiority over the other when the Constitution creates a balance and confines each organ to its respective sphere. The occasion for this criticism is the assumption that legislature is supreme. My response is it's the Constitution which is supreme, and because the Constitution is supreme, the separation which is there must be respected, and the court must be permitted to perform its job, which entails and entitles it to enunciate the basic structure doctrine. And over a period of time, all the instances that have been applied, it's been wholesome and beneficial in restraining authoritarianism in the exercise of executive power.
No, so Mahima Singh, I think part of the issues, of course, the origin of this confrontation was the Supreme Court striking down the NJAC. And again, I've not got an answer as to why, if in America, in Britain, the executive or other organs appoint judges, why in India that same principle should not apply. That's number one. And secondly, I think taking off from what Sania Talwar was also saying, I think the first part of what the Vice President said was that you cannot have a situation where legislation and the framing of legislation is being done by the courts. The business of making laws or the power to make laws is entirely with Parliament, is entirely with elected legislatures.
No, but this is completely wrong. The court, when it enunciates the basic doctrine, is not declaring, it's not legislating. What it's deciding is whether the what has been enacted falls foul of the Constitution.
No, that question was to Mahima Singh. No, for example, in the case of COVID, right? When COVID was happening, you did see a judicial pronouncement which encroached into, many would say, executive territory.
But that's got nothing to do with basic structure.
Okay.
That is every wrong in a judicial verdict doesn't necessarily go to basic structure. It's not because the basic structure doctrine that the COVID, whatever way the merits of it, has nothing to do with basic structure. We are on a different issue altogether. Basic structure is relevant to the COVID.
That, Zaka, is the exact problem of this government, because their attitude of the my way or highway is checked only upon by the judiciary. Otherwise, they have controlled all instruments, of governance. As the Honorable Chairman also said in his address, as he, reflecting upon their ideology, he said ultimate power is with the legislature. Legislature decides who will be there in other institutions, and that's their exact problem, that legislature in this case cannot decide upon who will be in the judiciary. And when you ask me your first question, Zaka, you say that in a US or a UK, how the judges are appointed. So let me also say that in a US or a UK, the judges don't retire. The judges serve their tenure, to a lifetime, actually, because the resource that is built upon is utilized to the fullest in advantage towards the governance of a democracy. But in our country, we know, we rightly know that the judges retire at a certain age. And there are so many other differences also. That is because we are a certain, the texture of our democracy is very different to the texture of theirs. We are the largest democracy of the world for a reason. And the only problem this government has with the checks that the judiciary puts on their governance is that, the autocratic and their majoritarian ways are not being allowed
no,
because...
So, again, let me go back. You may disagree with that judgment, but the fact is, and I'll ask PDT Achari this, demonetization, whether it was good or bad, whether it resulted in anything or not, was executive action. A judiciary sitting in judgment of that executive action, I'm not sure how that necessarily helps, or how that was envisaged in the Constitution. Executive action is executive action. The remit of the judiciary is to see if laws that are passed stand the test of the Constitution.
Well, the judiciary itself, the Supreme Court itself has said that it is not their domain to look into the policy of the government, and that is the prerogative of the executive government.